I love getting my tarot cards read. Sorry if that makes me a cliche, okay? I don't have a dentist, but I do have a psychic. The last time I saw her, she told me that I was going to marry a rich man, and that's exactly the kind of shit that I pay her to say. Yes, Rebecca, thank you. Absolutely. Take my money. I feel the way about tarot cards and psychics the same way that I feel about most things. Like, I'm into it, but I'm bringing a healthy dose of cynicism along with me. Do I believe them? Not really, but it is kind of fun to light a candle and get a crystal. And when something that they predict does work out, I'm like, yes, of course, just as the stars foretold. You are listening to Crime for Bed on Hatch Plus. My name is Deanna Ortiz. If you're looking for a true crime story to help you unwind, you're in the right place. Tonight, we are going to be talking about Miss Cleo. If you don't already know, Miss Cleo was an infomercial psychic who worked for the Psychic Readers Network. If you stayed up late past midnight in the 90s, you could watch anything being sold to you on these infomercials. And a lot of them had telephone numbers for people watching to call in. It was the Wild West out there. You could get anything from sex advice from a little old woman named Dr. Ruth to a multi-disc collector set of disco's greatest hits. Very conveniently priced at 4 easy payments of $19.99. Or you could have your future told to you by Jamaican psychic Miss Cleo, whose worldwide catchphrase, "Call me now," was as ubiquitous as Arby's "Where's the beef?" or "Yo quiero Taco Bell." The 90s was a different time, guys. Sometimes she'd wake up after falling asleep on the couch to just Miss Cleo or a Sarah McLachlan commercial about dogs that you need to rescue. And it's 2 o'clock in the morning and you're 10 years old and you got to go to bed, but you're also kind of into this commercial. To no one's surprise, this late night psychic who would read your fortune for $5 a minute wasn't all she was cracked up to be. Who could have seen that coming? I'm not going to do a lot of psychic puns in this episode, but I needed to get one out of the way. So let's start at the network itself. So Psychic Friends Network, or PFN for short, was launched in 1991 by Stephen Fetter and Lou Trosclair. 2 guys who had no psychic abilities at all, but wanted to cash in on this call-in infomercials or chat lines that were really popping off in the 90s. And while there were plenty of people selling phone calls to have a local babe in your area talk to you, there still weren't many call-in psychics, and these guys saw a big opportunity to make money. These phone calls would be broadcasted and used as marketing for people watching to be like, oh my gosh, yes, I do have to call and have this psychic tell me my 5-year plan. The thing was is that people were calling. It worked. People were calling for all sorts of reasons. They wanted a psychic to tell them, is my boyfriend cheating on me? Should I quit my job? Am I making good financial choices? And honestly, if you're calling a psychic helpline at 3 a.m., you're probably not. I'll be the one to tell it to you. And I'm not even a psychic. At its peak, Psychic Friends Network was bringing in as much as $125 million a year, namely thanks to one particular psychic, Miss Cleo. She had a thick Jamaican accent, and she was said and marketed on the channel to be a shaman from Jamaica. So on the Psychic Friends Network, they're like, oh, we went all the way to Jamaica and we found this shaman to come and read tarot cards for you at 2 o'clock in the morning. How lucky are we? Her ads were probably the most popular at the network because of her no-nonsense way that she would talk to people. She would take these ordinary questions that people would ask and launch into funny, unexpected stories, and people would take it as truth, right? So someone would show up and be like, who should I marry? And she'd launch into some old proverb of this and that and the other thing. And they're like, you know what, Miss Cleo, you're so right. But the thing is that certain things she would get right? For example, someone would call asking who her baby's father was, and Miss Cleo would say, the one with the chin, right? The baby has the same chin as the dad. You know that. And the caller would go, oh my God, you're so right. This is amazing. Or someone would call to ask about what to do about the 2 relationships that she's in. And Miss Cleo would tell her to ditch the married guy. And it's like, Miss Cleo, how did you know that one was married? Because they always are. It feels very suspicious in the same way that when you watch psychics on Oprah or Dr. Phil, they start with something so obscure and narrow it down with clues from the person that they're talking to. I'm sensing a J, and someone's like, James? And they're like, for sure. And then they narrow it down with little clues that this person is giving them until eventually they're like, yes, I'm speaking with your dead cat, James, when you were 15. I knew it. The way that the Psychic Friends Network made their money was by their crazy expensive per minute fee. Most places like this would charge 99 cents a minute, but to talk to Miss Cleo, you had to pay $5 a minute. And they would reel you in by saying, oh, the first 3 minutes are free and then it goes to 5. But those first 3 minutes are spent talking to an administrator for the company who's getting your information, your billing, your credit card, and any pertinent facts that they can then relate to the psychic, who will then use those facts to try and impress you with their, quote, spiritual abilities, quote. So if you call and talk to this administrator and you're like, yeah, I just want to talk about, my boyfriend, I think he's married. That information is going straight to the psychic. And you better believe the second the phone gets answered, your time has started. And sometimes people wouldn't even get to speak to a psychic until the 3-minute free deal was already up. And even then, there wasn't even a guarantee that you'd be able to talk to Miss Cleo. Sometimes you would wait for up to 6 minutes, $30, by the way, and then get matched with some random psychic named Jill who lives in North Dakota. It's fully a scam. But the average person calling in would spend $60 each time they called because they're calling again and again and again. As if that wasn't enough to bring revenue into the company, customers who had previously called started getting emails and cold calls saying that Miss Cleo had a premonition for you, right? They would get a phone call saying, there's something in your future that we need to call you about. You need to book a special tarot reading. It's vital that you call immediately, which, I mean, to be honest, is the same type of calls that I leave for my friends after I dream about them, but I'm not charging $5 a minute for that. Maybe I should. So these people would be enticed, like, oh my God, Miss Cleo had a dream about me. How exciting. I got a call. I got to give her $5 every minute I'm on the phone with her. So it wasn't long before people that were spending money at this company started fighting back over these giant phone bills that they were receiving from the Psychic Friends Network. And people started accusing this company of fraud because they were charging for services that were advertised as free. So even if you thought that those first 3 minutes were free, they would charge you for them anyway. They also were billing customers for services that they had never purchased and just hoped that they wouldn't notice or wouldn't look at the bill. And in response, the owners of the network threatened to report all of these customers that weren't paying their bills to their credit bureaus. So it's like, it's going to affect your credit if you don't pay us these bills for this psychic reading that you may or may not have gotten. You're going to threaten me with bad credit if I don't pay this bill? Good luck. Okay, my credit's already bad. I don't need you. So many people who have used the Psychic Friends Network tried to fight back on these charges that AT&T fully stopped providing billing services for companies that used a 900 toll number. AT&T was like, you know what? We're done. Stop fighting these charges. If you're going to call this company, use Verizon, okay? Because we are not going to help you anymore. And eventually, the Psychic Friends Network scam came to a head. And in 2000, the Federal Trade Commission sued the Psychic Friends Network for fraud. And during this trial, not only did they uncover all the secrets and scams that the company was a part of, but also that all of the other psychics, including Miss Cleo, were paid actors reading from a script. It kind of feels like Wizard of Oz when they pull back the curtain and they're just like, wait, it's not a wizard. It's actually an actress from California. Who could have seen that coming? At the end of the day, the only thing that the company cared about was keeping these people on the phone for as long as they could. Often when they would deliver their psychic readings, they would talk really slow and drawn out to make that per minute get higher and higher and higher. So Yuri Del Harris, aka Miss Cleo, she was not named in the FTC lawsuit, but a huge part of their investigation focused on her real life and her story. So Yuri was an aspiring actress who lived in Seattle, who was putting on her own plays in the early 90s. And one of these plays included a Miss Cleo character that was a psychic tarot card reader. And I guess the character just took over because when Yuri's sister suggested in 1997 that she start working for the Psychic Friends Network, she said the only way that she would do it is if she could do it as the Miss Cleo character. And while Yuri's energy and charisma on the phone as Miss Cleo was real, everything else about her was made up, even down to the convincing but fake Jamaican accent. I just can't stop thinking about the woman who called to see who her baby daddy was. Like, where is she going to go now? Jerry Springer? So after all of this information was brought to light, Yuri gave a statement. She said, I'm more of a shaman, an elder in a community who has visions and gives direction to people in their village. Which is vague, all right? It's almost as vague as any of the advice that she gave on her psychic network. So in 2002, the lawsuit with the FTC was settled, and the Psychic Friends Network was set to pay a $5 million fine and forgive an estimated $500 million in outstanding charges. But here's the crazy thing. The FTC never ordered the Psychic Friends Network to issue refunds for any of the customers who had already paid. So if you already paid your bill, you're screwed. I wonder if they'll do one of those. If you've been wronged by so-and-so, you're entitled to compensation ads in the future, right? Like I got a check from Facebook for $300. There's got to be a claim that someone could file for this. So Miss Cleo, aka Yuri, tried to reestablish the character as a nostalgic icon, popping up in random video games or interviews, or even doing a short-lived Cinnamon Toast Crunch commercial as Miss Cleo. But she ended up living a relatively quiet life until her passing in 2016. But it's not like this is the last time we saw this type of scam. It's just packaged differently for us now, right? Like Sylvia Brown, she even managed to scam the police. They actually used her to help with police investigations before realizing that she was a fraud. Or the Long Island Medium, right? Think about that. I do actually believe that Teresa Caputo is legit though, which means that it's probably working on me. That is all I have on the Miss Cleo scam. Thank you so much for listening to It's Crime for Bed. But before I go, remember, do not believe a psychic unless they're telling you something that you really want to hear. Good night.